What is early stage marketing? What's your playbook?
Hot take coming. Gonna get a lot of hate. Your comment section is gonna be fire.
These three things we're throwing at this wall.
Today, attribution is so hard, man.
What do you do in the first 3 months? What do you focus on?
I think the most boring marketing leaders are the people who are sort of like, my CEO said this, I'm going to follow this. How about we do something crazy?
I like when a certain marketing asset is being reused in many different ways, in many different channels.
Today, you've got social media marketers that are actually becoming CMOs. Backlinks are definitely not as important as they used to be. We outranked all of the major domains. You think of Salesforce, Canva, Notion, HubSpot, Slack, Ahrefs.
Thank you for making me look bad with our SEO strategy.
Marketers struggle with self-confidence a lot.
You essentially lost your passion to marketing.
Yeah.
Ahrefs Podcast.
First marketing hire at Hubstaff. First product marketing hire at Close. Founding marketer at Weflow. This is all from your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
At Weflow, you helped from pre-revenue to first customers. Joined Storylane in their second year, which means you're clearly an expert in quote-unquote early stage marketing. You even own earlystagemarketing.com, which was very funny when I discovered it. Let's talk about early stage marketing. What is early stage marketing? What's your playbook?
That's interesting. Yeah. So I think it just so happened that when I sort of joined like my first startup, right, it was an early stage role. I basically joined at something like 50K or 100K ARR. It was a small company called Clinchpad. And it was really all about like, how do we get that sort of predictability in like, you know, leads coming from marketing, right? Like, so it was all just like trying different channels, there's like this thing where it's like, throwing things everywhere and seeing what sticks basically, right? That's what we were trying to do. And so I started doing that, and then I took on a couple more roles, and I just realized that, okay, early stage is an interesting place to be, but there's two bits to it. One is sort of pre-revenue, which is sort of where you're trying to find, you just have to try a bunch of things. And then there is the other bit, which is sort of like, how do I say, more like early, late stage, which is more like, I have predictability. How do you sort of, get into a little bit more scale up mode? How do you sort of grow from, 1 million to 3 million or, 3 million to, 7 million? That's sort of like the place where it's sort of like, there are a lot of channels that are sort of being tried out, right? But there's no clear direction on which channel is sort of going to get you to that next million milestone, right? So I tackled both the problems. I actually like the latter one a lot more, and that's what I've been focusing on over the last couple of years.
There's like, you're saying throwing stuff in the wall and seeing what sticks, but there surely have to be some frameworks, principles, because you've done that at 5-6 different companies, and surely there's a playbook. There's stuff that you come in and say, even if you're throwing stuff at the wall, you're saying these three things we're throwing at this wall, and you surely have a prediction, because different companies, even by the way their product is, they would benefit more from different channels, and you don't understand what these channels are. So I wonder, you come into a new company, what are the things you start testing? What are like the top channels or whatever? What is early stage marketing playbook?
Yeah. So I mean, basically the way it starts is I can probably share an example at Storylane, for example, right? Like I've just completed a year at the company, right? And I came in and we sell to sales and marketing folks. We sell to product marketing managers and like pre-sales solution engineers and all that. And really it was just about first figuring out where do they hang out. It's not rocket science. You just sort of think about, where they, so I sort of looked at all the, potential places where we could be reaching to them. And that's the portfolio that you're sort of dealing with. That's all of the places you could potentially reach, or the 80-20 where you could sort of reach them, right? And then it's more about like, you have this portfolio. How do you sort of find which are the things which have like, maybe depending on the risk profile of the CEO and the startup, right? What is probably a high risk, high return sort of a portfolio, or low risk, high return, or whatever, right? Depending on whatever is the risk profile. So that's what I do, right? Like, so at Storylane, I was like, the first thing I picked up was actually the channel that I'm most confident in, which is SEO. So I'm like, I knew I could reach marketers and pre-sales folks through that. So I picked that up. I sort of started working towards it. How could we sort of scale it? How could we do it in a much faster way? I picked that up and then sort of started picking the other channels, right? Okay, maybe in-person events is another place where we see marketers, right? And it's just trying out different things. And like what tends to happen is like, I think in like the last 1 year, I think we've tried maybe like 50 things, but out of those 50, maybe the blockbuster hits were like 3, right? So it just, and that's it was the same thing even at Hubstaff, right? Like I tried something like 80, 90 sort of tactics. We used to run like a sprint for like almost 6 months, 3 tactics a week, sort of like that. And then out of that, like maybe 2 or 3 marketing channels sort of emerged out of it. So it's just about trying many, many different ideas really fast.
I'm still trying to understand how the early stage marketing, the term that you seemingly want to coin, is different, for example, from what we're doing right now at Ahrefs, which is not early stage marketing. Yeah. We're doing, I don't know, late stage marketing or whatever. So when you come in, you need to build out those channels, build out the fundamental channels. Yeah. And you, as you say, you throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and you need to prove that it has stuck. So I thought we were going to talk about this later, the topic of marketing attribution, but I feel it's actually good to mention it right now, because in early stage marketing, when you come to a company that didn't do much marketing before, and you have so many directions you can try and so many specific tactics, whether it is SEO, social, webinars, events, brand marketing, advertising. How do you kind of measure what is working? Because even the fact of measurement, where we look at bigger companies, they have entire kind of analytics teams, and there's like marketing analytics team, there's product analytics team, there's data science people, there's like data lakes and all that. So how do you go about proving the value of a marketing channel? While I imagine you need to be scrappy. You cannot just hire data analysts and say, oh, like this is what I know Markov chains are telling our best sources are, or whatever.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So again, like I said, it's different if you're at a 500K ARR and different if you're at a 3 or 4 million ARR, the early stage one, right? You can be a little bit more scrappy at the 500K ARR, but like at 4 million and all, you got to be a little bit more sort of strategic about it. But like for us, it's basically like, listen, we have all of these different channels we're trying, right? And I think 10 years back, right, attribution used to be a very linear sort of a path where it's like somebody would go in, check out your article, from that maybe sign up, and then you get like the last touch or the first touch attribution. It was still not perfect then, but it was like that was sort of the way it was, right? Today, attribution is so hard, man. It's like it's sort of like a standard journey is like somebody would sort of read an Ahrefs article, right? And then they would go on a community and they would be like, hey, I'm sort of thinking between, these 2 tools, which one should I choose, right? And then they'd get inputs from the community, and through that, they would go back to your homepage and sign up, right? So how do you sort of attribute to that, right? So we live in a world where the attribution is very sort of multi-touch, and we need to sort of evolve that way. So at least now, the way I sort of think is we basically look at 3 different levels where we find the attribution, right? And it's not very analytical, it's more directional, I would say. The first is the source of the traffic, because ultimately any marketing activity you do comes to the website. That's the nature of our business. So we sort of look at what is the source of traffic that's coming there. That's a very sort of vague idea that, all right, these are the initiatives that are driving traffic. The second layer is when somebody books a demo or signs up, we basically show up a form which says that, how do you hear about us? And then there's like a drop down, which is like organic social and, ads or different things, right? And honestly, right now, I'm not a fan of the drop down. I'll probably change that to a blank field because that, gives you better data. And then after that, we have a third layer. When somebody gets on a sales call, we ask the sales team to ask them like, how do you hear about us, right? And there's a custom field in our CRM that, sort of populates that. And the reason we have like these 3 layers of checks is because, what you'd often see is that the amount of traffic, a particular channel is getting, at the first level and at level 3, where the attribution coming from the demos tends to be slightly different, right? And what you'll notice is that you'll be getting a lot, like for example, for us, we're getting almost about 40-50% of our revenue through like brand, which is primarily led through LinkedIn, right? And then what tends to happen is that when you look at this data, right, and if it mirrors the investments you're making in marketing right now, right, and as long as the sales team or your PLG product is having best quarter over quarter, right, I think it's sort of working in the right direction, right? And we don't go too deep. Like, yes, we have the data in HubSpot and Google Analytics and a bunch of others, right? But I think that if you ask anybody in the analytics sort of dashboard, you'd see like there's like 50-60%, which is like unattributable. They're like, there's no source for it, right? And there's no sort of point in like, just going super deep into the data, trying to get the actual attribution. This is probably a little bit more sort of, it works for us at least. Yeah.
So you join a new company. Imagine that you joined a new company today. What do you do in the first 3 months? What do you focus on? Yeah.
So first thing is I look at what is the portfolio that I'm inheriting. So when I say portfolio, I mean, I always think of myself as like a fund manager. I've been given like this budget and I have these portfolio with stocks, and stocks are like my, marketing channels, right? And it's more about how do I sort of pick the right combination to get the, the incremental growth that I've been hired for. So that's what I do. I look at what team am I inheriting, what channels, have been tried, what's sort of working, what is the growth expectation, what's the risk profile of the CEO. He's the investor ultimately, right? And then I just sort of, in the next 3 months, sort of just tweak the portfolio to what aligns to my strengths, what works for the company, where I'm probably the most confident in sort of driving the results that the company is asking for.
So you on your LinkedIn, you say, I help SaaS companies to drive demand to grow from 5 million to 15 million.
Yeah.
Where are these numbers coming from? Why is 15 million the sweet spot for you to join? What kind of, resources in the company you have at this point? Let's start with that.
Yeah.
The 5 million. What is special about the company at 5 million?
That's a really, really good question, because so this actually came from, I was trying to find my positioning when I sort of went fractional, and I was like, I needed to find a sweet spot in terms of revenue. I always wanted to sort of attribute myself to revenue. And then what I find is that 4-5 million mark is, at least for me, it's one of the most wonderful places to be in, because it's like, you're still early stage in a way that everybody knows everybody. Whatever you do, you can see an impact, or how things are growing. You sort of often inherit a, blank slate, where, you have, room to sort of just, change things around, do things differently. There are no processes in place, right? And I don't think there is sort of a number that at 15 million things sort of go crazy, but somewhere around that phase, whether it's 15, 20, 25, right? Like things become a little bigger, right? They, there's processes, there's more number of people, there's a different way of doing things, right? And then you sort of start, at least I start losing a little bit of excitement at that phase. So maybe, of course, my answers might change 2 years later, right? But for me, that has been my experience. So I really like that 5 to 15 million stage, where you're sort of in that mode to just sort of drive, like a lot of revenue growth, but you have room to experiment a lot, and you sort of can build your own team. And that's essentially why I sort of picked that.
Would you say that when you join a company at 5 million and help it grow to 15 million, you almost act more as individual contributor, where a lot of stuff is coming directly from you, all the decisions, all the initiatives, you give feedback on nearly anything that the marketing team is shipping? while at 15 million, you need more independent people who would make decisions on your behalf necessarily. Is this kind of what you're doing?
I mean, I don't think there's a standard answer for this. Like it's always, but I know this for a fact at 5 million, I'm not 100% manager. That's the simple answer, right? Like there are bits where I'm doing things on my own, which I enjoy, right? And I'm not saying that at 15 million, you'll be at 100% manager, but that percentage will definitely get higher at 15 million, right? At 15 million, you're just sort of doing that. I'm not going to deny, like right now at my sort of current role, right? It is a lot of like strategic and management at this point, right? It is, I'd say about 70-80% of that, but like the 20-30% that I do, I still really enjoy that as well. So yeah.
So yeah, the sweet spot you've picked for yourself with early stage marketing and 5 million to 15 million ARR is very interesting to me. And I also noticed from your LinkedIn that you only stayed in each company for like slightly more than a year. Well, in Hubstaff you were like for 4 years, and then close Weflow. What else was there? You stayed for like a year and a half, something like that.
At Bonsai, yeah.
Why don't you stay for 3? I think the typical tenure of CMO is like 3 years. Why don't you help and like expand your positioning, I don't know, from 10 million to 50 million or something?
It's funny that you said the CMO tenure is 3 years, because like from at least what I've spoken with a lot of my peers, it's actually 9 months.
9 months.
So we have very different data points.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, I think it just varies at different companies.
A lot of statistics online can be trusted.
But yeah, for me, it was more like, I think when you're sort of going through your career, you're also trying to find the right sort of company. And, it's not like you're here at every company where you sort of stay for 4 years. Like, there's very few, and I don't think that any marketer that I know that's been there at a company as long as you have, right? Like you've been, was it
9 years.
10 years? Okay, yeah, 9 years.
Yeah, it's almost 10 now.
Yeah. So I think it varies at where you sort of just end up vibing with, right? But it's also like, that like, at times where you sort of reach a certain point in your role where either you maybe, stop sort of enjoying or you stop learning, or, your CEO stops sort of getting value from you, right? Like there's different things that happen, right? Sometimes it's more like, the portfolio has evolved to maybe a little bit more than you, or maybe you're just not learning a lot more, right? It's also a lot of like these sort of variations. So it's not like out of like that I left consciously. I think it was like more like at different stages I felt like this was perhaps the right time to move on from the other role. Yeah.
Okay, so it's more kind of outside factors and the unique situation in every company, rather than you having a marketing playbook that you come, implement in a year, move on to other company, implement the playbook, move on to another company. It's kind of almost like a fractional kind of role, kind of consultant, because you have this understanding of how to get the company, how to build marketing for them, the early stage marketing function for them. And you just feel comfortable going in, implementing it, and going to the next company, rather than adapting to everything that changes in the company and continue to build out marketing function.
Not really. Like I would say, like for example, like I can give a couple of examples, right? Like at one of the companies I was with, it was like a company called Bonsai, right? Like it was more like, I think we had an amazing run. We had an amazing revenue growth for about a year and a half and 2. And then I think we came at a point where it was like, there was a portfolio that I sort of wanted to go with, because I knew I had a high conviction and confidence that that's going to work. And my CEO had like a different sort of portfolio that he wanted to go with, right? And it was just like at one point, it was like, either, I sort of take the call or he does it, right? And then that was the point where it was like, okay, you know what? I think it's time to move on. It was like that, right? So again, I don't think it's just, ultimately you just, every 6 months, you just sort of keep seeing like how the vibe is going with the company, right? And sometimes you have like 2 years of vibe, and then after 2 years it's sort of like, okay, now it's maybe a good time to sort of move out. It's not fractional. It's not like there's a different process and it's like It's every role is unique in its own way.
That's what I was saying. Every role is unique. It's not that you're kind of coming and implementing the same thing for everyone. Okay, you mentioned CEO, and you mentioned kind of every 6 months testing like what's going on, and you have an interesting post on LinkedIn about CEO head of marketing fit. Can you tell me about CEO head of marketing fit?
So I've worked with about 7 CEOs now in my 12 years.
7.
7. I've worked at like four companies full time, but then I was also sort of working very closely with some other CEOs as well, like on a bunch of things. And so I think what I've just realized is that every CEO has a very, very different profile. Like they're all different people, right? Somebody comes from a venture-backed background. They're more for like, let's go for unprofitability for a while, just for high growth. Some are like very bootstrapped. Hey, we want to save money. We want to maximize profit, right? Some are like a little bit, willing to sort of go on a high growth to a point where we're just sort of break even. It's different for everybody, right? And I think you need to understand the risk profile before you even join. Even consider a head of marketing role. You need to sort of understand, and this can only come from like 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 conversations as well, right? Where you sort of understand what are their growth goals, how much are they willing to put into marketing, right? And there are 2 main things I always look at, right? Whenever you're sort of looking for that role fit, right? One is this risk profile, right? Like, is this risk profile sort of like what I want to also go into, because ultimately it's going to be that risk profile that's going to drive the company, right? Because he's the CEO, he or she's the CEO, right? And then there's a vibe match that happens, right? Which is hard to sort of put it, but you just sort of know that this is going to work, right? It's almost like if you've ever gone for therapy, for example, right? And you talk to a lot of people know you won't sort of end up going with your first therapist. You talk to a bunch of therapists, and then you're like, oh, this is the person I vibe with. And that's what also like a lot of the CEOs are like, you'll work with a bunch of them, and then you'll realize that this one person shares similar values, similar sort of risk profile, similar view of the future. And when you sort of look at that vibe, it's a lot of things like how good are you sort of as a relationship in terms of conversations, right? How do you see attribution? That's a big one, right? Do you see it differently? Do you see it the same way? How do you see the company sort of growing, right? A lot of these different things, right? And I think that's very, very important. If you find those 2 before you sort of join the role, it'll just be, you can't find everything, but if you do, it's going to be amazing. And that's probably also like, I'm guessing you and your CEO at Ahrefs, right? You guys have like this unspeakable vibe between each other that might have sort of worked initially, no?
We are very different with him. And I think this is what creates the vibe, because we are completely different people. He's very engineering driven. I'm very kind of marketing driven, and we think differently, and this is what creates the vibe. Yeah. Because we don't necessarily agree on everything, but when we start arguing, we figure some cool things out.
Yeah, but I think, it's 100%. Like that is also a vibe match, right? You might have different sort of, opposites attract, right? So maybe that works, right? Or maybe it's also like the fact that he trusts you 100%, right? On like taking a lot of the decisions on your own. Like he sort of handed over the function to you, right? That's another vibe match. Like he trusts you on that, right? So it's a lot of those different things. It's very hard to put a definition to it. You just know when you found the right person.
So I know there is no right or wrong answer to this, because every person is different, and that's not necessarily bad. But for you personally, and for your current kind of niche of early stage marketing, when you talk to CEOs, what are some instant red flags when you know, nah, this is not the person I want to go and work with, because my way of doing things won't vibe with them?
Yeah, I think one thing for sure is if they're very unwilling to let go of marketing to another person.
That's a good one.
Big one.
That's a good one.
If somebody's sort of overprotective about it, I don't want to get into that mess, right? Like, if you want to handle that, then why you hire, looking for a head of marketing. So that one comes up quite often. And I've seen that in the past as well. I think that is one. I think the other thing I would also say is that how I'd say like how what's the right word for it? How confident or how sort of rational are they thinking about the future ahead? Like, for example, you might work with a CEO and they'd be like, oh, today we are at 1 million ARR. By the end of this year, we want to be at 20 million ARR. Like, I mean, and there's I can give you a bunch of examples. People are like, oh, we're a very high growth person, right? Like, I'm like, I don't believe in that. So I think those are two major things I would probably sort of look at.
I really like the red flag of CEO not willing to let go of marketing function. And I think if I remember correctly, I had at least 2 guests on Ahrefs podcast already. I think it was Laura Roder, two CEOs basically, Laura Roder, and we just published an interview with Brian Harris from Videofruit. Not sure if you know him.
Yeah.
But both of them had struggles hiring their heads of marketing. But because they're smart people and they analyze what's happening, they told me that I understand that it's because I'm not willing to let this go. I feel that marketing is something I am good at. And this is why I'm constantly interfering with my marketing leader. And they hate it and they are stressed. They cannot stay. So yeah, in that regard, I'm quite blessed that Dmitry doesn't interfere with marketing too much. He did a lot of kind of aligning with me in the early years where he was kind of telling me what he likes and what he doesn't like, how he sees kind of the company, how he sees what we do, our ideology and those kinds of things. But then he completely let go, and it's very rarely that he would interfere. And this is why I'm 9 years, almost 10 years with Ahrefs. So I really like that red flag. And I think it also goes back to the kind of standard framework that any company should be started by engineer and marketer. You need to have an engineering mind and a marketing mind to excel. 100%. So yeah, that's very cool. You also talked about trust, and I think this is a quote from your LinkedIn, or maybe from one of your LinkedIn posts, where you were talking about your experience with Storylane. And you said that earning the CEO's trust was key kind of in the early stages. And I guess it's same for every company that you join as a marketing leader. It's very important that you earn trust with CEO. So what are some tips of how you do it, how you gain this trust?
Yeah. So, there's an interesting quote that I actually heard at a conference recently. It said, a confused CEO is an angry CEO.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Right. So it's actually a confused executive is an angry executive, but it applies to CEO as well, right? If they're confused, they're angry with you, right? If they don't have clarity on what's happening, right? And that is what you sort of need to kind of get to at the initial stages, even at Storylane, right? Like I was talking to my CEO like initially before I came in, and he was like, listen, the next couple of months we're going to align, like you and Dmitry, and by the end of it, I want to hand over marketing to you, right? So first of all, green tick. Yeah. That's exactly what you want to do. But then it was like the first 3 to 5 months was earning his trust. And it was about things like, how sort of extreme ownership am I taking with the function, right? Or it was things like, how proactive am I being with sort of moving things forward, right? How well am I communicating about what's happening, what the portfolio is looking like, right? Ultimately, helping him be at ease that, listen, I can sort of just, fire myself out of this. And, I know that this is in safe hands, right? And I think it was that's how it was like, like I said, initially I sort of identified the portfolio and I started working on it. The next 3 months, he sort of used to align and see how I was working, how I was taking the initiatives. I was also constantly asking for feedback. And I think by the end of it, if a CEO trusts, if they feel that they're confident to give that over, that's fine. I will say that I've also had a time in the past where somebody wasn't able to trust me, like a CEO wasn't able to trust, right? And again, you always learn from experience, right? But, at those times, it's more like I think the feedback I had gotten was that they were very unclear about, what's next. They were very unclear about what's happening, and they were confused, right? Which is not a good state to be in, right? So that's sort of like, I'd be my advice here as well. If you want to, if you want to sort of earn their trust, you just have to make it as clear as possible what you're doing and what's sort of being worked on.
You know what I just thought about the whole thing with the CEO, head of marketing fit and earning the trust of your CEO in the early days? Again, thinking back at my experience with Ahrefs, the thing is, when I joined Ahrefs, first of all, I will say that CEO has all the right to demand something from their marketing leader because it's their business. They're hiring you and they want you to do something they need you to do. So they have all the right to tell you what your goals are, what you need to be doing, what they want you to do, what they don't want you to do. And the thing is, when I joined Ahrefs, I had zero ego. Because I never been there, I never done that. I was a blank slate. Okay, tell me how you see it. I will adapt, I will try, I will adjust. But now thinking of it as I've been for almost 10 years with Ahrefs and I have this track record of helping the company grow from less than 10 million to over 100 million, now I do have an ego. And if I go to other company to help them grow, and I know that I can do it because I've been there, I've built teams, I've executed lots of different things, and CEO would be telling me, no, you're wrong, now it would be a problem. So it's interesting that probably as you go from company to company in those early days when you just join and you need to earn trust and you need to get this vibe going between you, the marketing leader, and the CEO, you have to put your ego aside. And you have to keep in mind that it's their business and they're bringing you because they have some vision. And it's also probably the red flag, which you need to figure out in the beginning if their vision and your vision align.
Yeah, but so the 100%, the vision and your vision should align. That's a very good point, right? And that also comes to the fact that I don't agree that, yes, it's their business. Yes, they ultimately get to take the end call. But whatever they say you have to do, that shouldn't happen, right? There's a reason why you're sort of coming in with your own sort of functional expertise, right? You have a say in it. And that needs to be heard and that needs to be taken into consideration too, right? I think the most boring marketing leaders are the people who are sort of like, my CEO said this, I'm going to follow this, right? That's just, you're coming in, you have your own sort of, personal sort of experiences and different takes into it. And those are the ones that I've usually seen succeed really well in their roles, right? And I think that's very important. So, I completely agree, right? There is some amount of ego that comes into you over the years of experience, right? And it's hard to shake off, right? But that also, I wouldn't say that's completely bad. And I'll tell you why. I think marketers struggle with self-confidence a lot. A lot of people, especially. I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people, right? And some amount of ego actually helps you, sort of build that confidence, right? And that confidence is what helps you oftentimes to succeed in a role, right? If you're constantly doubting everything you do, right, you won't ever be able to take decisions. You'd be like, okay, the CEO is saying that, I'll just follow that, that's a recipe for disaster, right? You need to have some conviction in yourself, and that maybe comes from a little bit of ego. I'm not saying just be like that,
Yeah, I guess for a marketing leader in the position of CMO of head of marketing, it's not just important to know marketing, understand how it works, have this experience, but also the people skills. Because like you said, and I agree with you, having a certain amount of ego and confidence is very important. Because you do want to execute what you think is right. You do want to take responsibility for your decisions, and not just CEO told me to do this, whether I agree or not, I did, whether it worked or not, it's not my call, I'm not responsible for this. So you have to balance between your confidence and your willingness to take a stance and say, I know this is going to work, I will prove it to you, and arguing with your CEO on everything. So it takes a lot of people skills and understanding who are you talking to, how to talk to them correctly, those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, but I think it also is like you learn that with experience. Because you start sort of trusting a little bit of your skills as well, right? Like that there are certain things where you're right. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think you ultimately do get that. And I think if you're very sort of, I'd say, if you know yourself well, if you've asked questions to yourself quite a lot, right? And if you know that, okay, you have some level of confidence, right? That balance is easy. I don't think it's less of a people skill. It's more of just a confidence issue. And that, I mean, I can't even tell you like that self-confidence is a thing that like a lot of people need to work on. Even like for me, like, I mean, I've had in past roles where I was like, you're sort of winging the head of marketing role until you actually are able to do that. Like, I'll be honest, like, I mean, the best piece of advice I got from like somebody I used to report to used to be like, fake it till you make it, right? And that's what I did. It's in like my initial roles. I was like, I'm gonna act like that and try to see that. But and then when you're sort of constantly doubting yourself, you stop becoming confident about like the decision you've taken. Like you'd second guess it, right? And then things sort of go badly from there. So yeah, I mean, I'd say just build that confidence in yourself. The people skills will come.
So we talked a lot of about a lot of general stuff. Let's switch to quite specific tactical things.
Let's do it.
And starting from the stuff you did at Storylane. So you mentioned on your LinkedIn probably, or in your notes to me, we launched a company-wide employee advocacy push, especially focusing on our teams in sales, marketing, and customer success. So basically you made the employees of company share stuff on LinkedIn. And I think you also said that, first, we realized that nearly half of our revenue and pipeline were coming from our brand presence on LinkedIn. First of all, how did you track that?
Like I said, we have those 3 layers of attribution. If you see that in your how do you hear about us form, the word of mouth, the brand, LinkedIn, paid social, organic social just keep showing up again and again, more than like 5-6 times out of 10, right? Like, that's half of it, right?
Okay, employee advocacy program. Walk me through it.
Yeah, So that it's an interesting one because, I think everybody right now, every company, they want their employees to be advocates, right? If you're sort of if you want to grow on LinkedIn, you have to start from like your team members because I mean, everybody knows the company profiles don't have a lot of reach. Personal profiles have a lot more reach, right? So you need to leverage that to be able to get that initial spark to your brand. But it's also incredibly hard because team members are like, you need to push them. Some people are just not social media savvy. Some people don't want to share. Some people, they're too busy in their work, right? So one thing we've realized is one is obviously you need to sort of lead from the front, right? Like, so the CMO, the CEO, the functional heads, they need to sort of be very active on LinkedIn. They need to bring that up in the all hands meetings or the team meetings of why it's so important to, sort of post on LinkedIn, show them the data, why it's sort of bringing in deals, right? So there's a clear indicator that this is important, this is working, and you need to do that, right? That's sort of gives that clarity. So I'm not even kidding. Like we have an all hands meeting every 2 weeks. Every all hands meeting, like we start out with like, thank you for the support. Thank you for sort of helping us out on LinkedIn. Thank you for posting on LinkedIn, right? And we sort of end it with like engage, like that. And there's also a second piece to it, which is about positive reinforcement. So even if the team is not sharing on LinkedIn, right? If you keep sort of complimenting them, in every call, right? And saying that, hey, thank you so much for supporting. Thank you so much for pushing this out on LinkedIn, right? It's sort of, like the other team members start sort of picking it up. And that was actually a big realization, right? Instead of you sort of coming in the comments like, listen, everybody, we need your support on LinkedIn. You guys are not engaging on our LinkedIn posts or sharing, right? That's sort of putting them in a bad light. If you do go with a more positive reinforcement where it's like, hey, thank you so much for supporting us. Continue doing that, right? Then it's sort of like, okay, you're putting them in a positive frame of mind. That's number 2. I think a third thing is that you need to have things that are worth, like people are naturally excited about sharing. One of the things that's worked really well for us for employee advocacy is doing like some of these one-of-a-kind initiatives. Like, for example, I'll give you an example for you at Ahrefs, right? Like you did that. I think you did that. You have this conversation going with somebody, right? This sort of, I don't know, a war of words or whatever. It's just like, not a war of words, sorry. Sort of like you put a hot air balloon and then,
selfie battle.
Yeah, selfie battle. Oh yeah, sorry. And you've been having that for 4 or 5 years, right? Now that is something like, that's super cool, right? You don't even have to push your team members. They'll share it right away, right? Similarly for us, right? We've done, not that, but like, we've done an award show, which is in the style of the Dundies in the office, right? Now that's something people would be inclined to share. So the more these cool one-of-a-kind initiatives you do, you'll have more content the employees would be happy to share. I think these are just a couple of things. And then I think another last thing I would also add is that we also have like an internal sort of leaderboard between team members. So we have this thing called LinkedIn Club. It's like a Slack channel. And everybody who's part of the LinkedIn Club has a subscription to Shield, which is a LinkedIn profile analytics tool.
Haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's sort of like LinkedIn's analytics suck.
What is Shield? Dot what?
Shieldapp.ai or something
Shield,
like that.
Okay.
And like LinkedIn doesn't show very good analytics of like which posts are working for you. It has very basic level, right? And you can't really have like a leaderboard. So it basically allows you to like just set up like your whole team there. And then you can see like who is sort of top of the leaderboard, top 1, 2, 3, right? And that creates like another environment, like, hey, so I think just a mix of all of these things, like over months worked for us ultimately.
Okay, let me challenge your thinking or just general thinking about employee advocacy programs by putting it against, let's call it company influencers. And what I mean by that is out of all people in Ahrefs, I probably have the biggest following on LinkedIn. It's something like 40,000 followers or 35, I don't remember, but something like this. And the thing is, whenever I post something, let's say cool or like useful, it can get very big reach. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think my monthly reach is like in hundreds of thousands or something like this. I don't remember the exact number, so I might be well off. But last time I was checking, and some of our competitors posted their reach on LinkedIn, and I realized that I alone are making kind of 1/3 of their reach, just me. And I recently recorded an interview with Neil Patel, who has entire team working on his social profile, so he doesn't even touch them. And the kind of my challenging question is it more useful to have your employees post something on LinkedIn, while I'm sure they have some work to do on their own that they need to focus on, and they don't already have a large following? And to have a large following, you also typically need to be someone. So why would people follow, I don't know, a customer support person, just a regular? They might follow the head of customer support if they're in customer support, but why would they follow a customer support person who's talking about their company as a part of employee advocacy program? But at the same time, we have marketing leaders like myself, like Ryan, our head of content, like Patrick, who is one of the best technical SEOs in the world, and people want to follow those guys. So instead of creating employee advocacy program where you invite nearly anyone to post, whether it's a salesperson, customer support person, whether they're working in product or whatever, and share something while they don't have an audience, while they're not working on their LinkedIn presence, as opposed to you having those couple leaders who are already getting traction on LinkedIn and you investing resources of other team to help kind of ghostwrite posts in a way. Because, for example, sometimes when I write my post on LinkedIn, I would send it to Ryan, our head of content, and say, can you help me tighten it up? Because he's much better at copywriting than me, and he can rework things to make it work well. So he's actually investing his time to help me get more reach on LinkedIn. So yeah, I wonder what are your thoughts on that? Engaging your team, who, like you said, is not necessarily interested to do it, and a lot of people are not very into social, as opposed to identifying a few key people who are already getting traction and putting your resources there?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I'm in a slightly different situation as you, where it's like, I am not the person with the most followers in the marketing team. I have 2-3 others. So like my head of brand, she has like maybe double the amount of followers and maybe double the amount of impressions, right? And you know, we have like these marquee team influencers in the team. There are like 5-6 folks that get a lot of reach. Like even I do get, but like I've got like, for example, my head of product, Luca. I've got somebody from our STR team, our head of brand. These are all like different, even our CEO, right? So there are all of these 5-6 accounts that have the 80-20 impact in terms of impressions, right? So, and they're the ones that are like, they're also into the whole craft of like creating the LinkedIn posts. They're sharing things, not just about Storylane, but also like their learnings and all of that, right? So it's easy with them. Like, you just sort of build that into their sort of cadence, right? And we support them in every way. We'll give them the content. We'll sort of give them feedback. I've got, a team member from the brand team who's sort of just focused on helping with the employee advocacy. Like she's basically reviewing their posts if they need help. If they need any resources, we'll provide it for them. So all of that, right? But to your question about like customer support and all of these, right?
Just so people with no audience.
Yeah.
Why would you motivate them to post something?
So when I say, and there's a reason why I've mentioned that the advocacy works particularly in marketing, sales, customer success. Engineering is a different crowd. Let's just, right? Like, so we're not, unless you're a DevOps tool, then it's a different thing, right? But we sell to marketing and sales. So customer support, for example, and customer success is connecting a lot with your customers. So in their audience, you have a lot of, like in our support team's audience, there's a lot of our own customers, right? And when they post something, it's not about the amount of reach and all, right? Like it's more like, okay, they reach to 50, let's say Storylane customers. Let's even put it that way, right? And then let's say one of them likes it. It sort of creates a little bit of awareness about it, right? But what's interesting is that when you have all of these folks from customer support or marketing or sales sort of posting it, right? There was a comment that we got, right? Which is like, every time I open my LinkedIn feed, I see you guys. And that's the place to be at. Like whenever somebody opens, there should be some sort of Storylane content that shows up, right? And I don't necessarily care too much about like the number of impressions, right? Honestly, 1,000 impressions is also great. But like, just think about it, right? Like you got 10 minutes to speak in front of 1,000 people. That is insane on its own, right? And really, you just need to care about like the 200, 300 people that are important to you, right? Like, yes, you could get 100,000 impressions, but really the decision makers are going to be 200, 300. So yeah, I think it's more about just, going through like these specific teams, having them share it with our customers. Like the sales team is connected with a lot of prospects who are currently in the deal cycle or might have gone cold or might not have picked Storylane, right? They see us, they will somewhere see a pipeline. So that's why these 3 functions, and it's led by the marquee accounts that I just told you about.
So you said you have a leaderboard with a lot of people in the company kind of competing who has the best performing post on LinkedIn or something. How many people are there?
Okay. So there are 8 people in the entire team that are part of the leaderboard right now. They're the ones that are like actively sort of being part of the leaderboard. You can't have people who are like passively just posting only Storylane content there because they're just not interested to be a part of it. There are 8 people that are like willingly being competitive about this right now.
And do each of these people select what they want to post themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like, for example, you launch something. You recently launched Demo Hub or something. We're going to talk about it a bit later. It's not that you say we are launching Demo Hub. I want from each of you a post about Demo Hub.
We do say that. Yeah.
You do say that.
Yeah, of course. Like, you've got your own content, do that. But try to fit ours too, right? So I tell them that, listen, we have a Demo Hub coming out. Or like maybe when this podcast episode goes live, I'm going to tell everybody, I'm like, listen, this episode goes live. This is great. You should post about it, right?
Please do. Yeah. I need to have some special prize for whoever like gets first on your leaderboard with the post about this podcast. We'll figure it out later. Okay. Let's talk about the demo day, this initiative. So again, to quote you, we set up an event where 4 companies demoed their products in 10-minute slots without requiring any contact info from attendees. The results were wild. We had our highest registrations ever, tons of buzz, and we even closed some enterprise deals on the back of it. And again, I want you to walk me through the whole thing with the demo day, like the thinking behind it, what it is. And what I also noticed is that there were demo days under the brand of some other companies. So RevGenius demo day, Pavilion is bringing together 6 companies. So yeah, tell me about all this thing and how it fits.
Yeah, so and that's why we stopped the demo days. Just FYI, like we stopped doing that because everyone just everyone's
wait,
copying
so
it.
RevGenius demo day and Pavilion is not yours?
No, it's not ours. It's not. Yeah, it's
okay.
They just sort of took that concept because it works really well for communities because they work on sponsorship revenue, and this sort of fits in their portfolio really well. It was so funny because like when we announced our demo day, we had another sort of community announce the exact same thing like a week later with the same name and everything, right? That happens in marketing. People tend to copy tactics and all of that. We took inspiration from another company called Demo. They also did like a demo day, which was slightly different. Ours was more like an interactive demo day, very sort of close to our product. But like they had like this thing, right? So yeah, and we did that initially. It was more like, so we're a buyer enablement tool, Storylane, right? Like we help help companies make their buying process easier with demos and like self walk through demos. And we were thinking like, what are different ways where we can sort of help the buyers? And this demo day concept came to be where it's like, there are all of these all of these buyers looking for software. They don't want to get on a sales call. They don't want to share their credit card details. They don't want to fill a demo form. They just want to see the product, right? And that's why, we came like, hey, how about we get like 4 sellers on a particular call, right? And just demo them, but we're not going to share the contact details of the prospects with any of these companies. People can just come in, listen to the demo. If they feel this is something they want to go with, they can sign up. And we can also send their interactive demo links in there, right? So they can sort of understand the product. And then, and this was like a sort of a modification of the concept that Demo went with. We did that. And when we did that, right, like we just, there was like this, there's something that I'm going to talk about soon, which is about marketing channel market fit, which is sort of like sometimes certain channels just fit so well. Like, when you put that out there, you just see like this instant fit. Everybody loves the concept. You get a shit ton of registrations. You don't even have to put a lot of effort in there. This was one of those things where we put that, just flooded with requests, flooded with companies wanting to demo, flooded with buyers who wanted to sort of. So we used to do like these webinars, and like, I'll be honest, like I think our webinars used to get like maybe 100 registrants. And then we put this out and we got 800 registrations. And we're like, okay, now we're on to something. That's interesting. And so, yeah, that's what we did, about 2 demo days. And then like now the market is filled with at least 100 demo day events. And it felt like sort of, it's not a one of a kind initiative. And then we sort of just pulled the plug on that one.
Okay, first of all, you did a couple demo days and I wasn't invited to demo Ahrefs there. So I'm deeply offended. Secondly, I still struggle a little bit to understand this as a marketing, channel, tactic, campaign, whatever you call it. Walk me through it from Ahrefs' perspective. So if you were to invite us to your demo day, how would you pitch it to me?
Oh, for you, it's more like, listen, you have this huge audience of buyers.
Where is this audience coming from?
It's coming from our own user base. It's coming from like all of the ads and LinkedIn and everything we do, right? So
you would promote Ahrefs to your audience of customers?
Yep. I mean, there's no harm to it, right? Like we're not competing with them.
So like, why would your audience of customers care about the demo day where Ahrefs would showing off? Like, let me answer this question and you'll tell me if I'm thinking in the right direction. Because you have a software for creating demos, maybe customers of your software or maybe potential customers who are on your email list, they want to see how other companies do demos, and this is why they join Demo Day.
No.
So they literally want to discover other tools?
Yeah, so it's sort of like we sell to marketers and sales, right? Yeah. We've got product marketing managers and we've got like different marketing teams sort of using Storylane. They're not just, they're using our tool for demos, right? But they have a whole tool stack. that they're sort of always struggling with, right? They're looking for the best rank tracking tool. They're looking for the best marketing attribution tool that's for the new age, right? And if you can give them that 10 minute demos and give them like an interactive demo of the tool to them, right? Without them having to share their details. Like for example, with Ahrefs, like let me just ask you, right? Somebody who has to see the platform, they either need to put in their credit card details, right? Correct?
No. We have ample content on YouTube. You can just search Ahrefs platform on YouTube and see how to use the platform. That's the cool thing about it.
But that's my point. Like seeing something that's more like when you see a video, that's more like it's a passive viewing experience. You're not really fully able to go deep dive into the product. For a technical buyer, for example, who's aware about the other sort of keyword research tools, right? And they're trying to find why Ahrefs is the best tool from their perspective, right?
Oh, but we're digressing. Let's go back to the demo day.
Yeah. So, but like, for example, even for the demo day, right? Like we've got all of these marketers who are sort of looking at this different tool stack, right? And we're sort of giving them these demo days with a particular category. Like one category we did was sales enablement tools.
Okay.
Right? And then there would be 4 sales enablement companies that would sort of demo. And then how would that sort of help with you, right? Or one could be like an attribution day, right? So it's just different companies and us sort of giving them these options and they can then take a decision.
Okay, so it's like essentially it's like Product Hunt, because a lot of people follow Product Hunt because they kind of want to discover new interesting products that are being launched.
Yeah.
And in a way, you also have an audience of marketers, and like you said, they are interested in any other tools or services that appear. And Demo Day is a good way for them to quickly discover a bunch of services.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Now you also had Demo Dundies, which I believe is kind of an ego bait marketing play.
Why do you say so?
Because ego bait, this is when you bait people by letting them show off to your audience. You kind of celebrate people, you put them on the pedestal, and they are eager to join because you're going to kind of say good things about them. Well, it's ego bait is a pretty.
I didn't know about this term.
You didn't know about this term? Oh, it's very famous. It's very famous in SEO and link building.
Okay.
Because you can write an article, you can feature a bunch of people there, and then you email those people and say, "Look, I said a bunch of good things about your work," and those people would be willing to link to it, to share. Basically, with this interview, I'm ego baiting you because you're going to share because we're talking about you and like your work.
Yeah.
So Demo Dundies, because the concept is very similar in a way that you have people doing demos of their tool. But with the demo day, you were creating kind of an event where your customers would discover new tools. But with Demo Dundies, you were basically celebrating the best demos created by your customers.
Yeah, it was more like it came with the idea that I think one was we definitely wanted to do an award show. I'll tell you, like the demo automation category is relatively new. A lot of people struggle with like, what is the best practice? What is a good demo? What is a bad demo? How should they sort of put the CTAs or gate or ungate the demo and all of that, right? And there's no sort of central place for people to sort of understand what's sort of like the gold standard in terms of demos. And so we basically had a 2-part goal here, right? Like we wanted to create like this, basically celebrate the best demo, show like what is good actually, and then also sort of drive some sort of advocacy from customers and potential prospects. And so the initial idea was around do something like a Forbes 30 under 30, right? Where like we sort of celebrate exactly like what ego bait is, right? But those most of the times if you've ever been featured in the 30 under 30, right? Like it's very like people call that I don't know if you're allowed to use cuss words here, but like people call that shit out all the time, right? Like that's just it's like anytime I see on somebody's LinkedIn, it's like a global marketing leader 30 under 30. No, you're not. No, I'm just but yeah. So we wanted to go with a different approach, and one interesting thing that I actually learned from somebody was trying to bring in some sort of nostalgia into your event to be able to reach a mass audience. And that was when we sort of started looking like, could we take? So we're big The Office fans. Have you seen? You've seen the show, right?
Of course, yeah.
So The Office is like a lot of plays where you can sort of be creative with your own marketing around it, right? We could also have gone with like the Olympics or Harry Potter, but we chose The Office. And they had an award show called the Dundies. So we thought, let's call this the demo Dundies. And we would do the event in exactly that style. We're going to dress up as The Office characters. We're going to have a performance from Prison Mike and all of these different things, right? And so we basically announced that. And what that helped with was, A, there was an interactive demo audience that sort of participated in the event, and B, there was an audience of Office fans on LinkedIn, sales and marketing folks, right, that didn't know about these interactive demo awards, but knew about The Office and the Dundies, and they came in, right? And because of that, we were able to, obviously get a lot of nominations, a lot of registrations and all. That actually made the event a lot more successful, right? And I think that is a playbook I would want to go with in the future as well, right? Do an event where you sort of latch on to any sort of a pop culture reference and everything. I think that worked for us. And another thing was just that, so initially when we did Demo Dundies, we got like 20 nominations for 5 awards. It wasn't a lot. And then I was discussing with my CEO and like, how about we do something crazy? How about we offer an all expenses paid trip to one nominee? So we decided that award, and we put like a prize limit of like 5K for 2 people. We would do an all expenses paid trip. The moment we put that award up, I think our registrations rose from like 20 to like maybe 115 or something, right? Which actually made the event a success. So yeah.
My first question is about distribution.
Yeah.
Because whenever you create any marketing asset, whether it is a PDF, a blog article, a webinar, or the kind of ego bait customer celebration like this one, you have to know how people are going to learn about it.
Yeah.
And with the demo day, we discussed that basically you're relying on your own audience. You're showcasing people who want to demo their software to your own audience. With Demo Dundies, because you had those nominations, first of all, there's quite a bit of distribution built in, because first of all, you need to raise awareness among people to even apply.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of promotion and distribution. And then you need to promote the end result.
Yeah.
The actual awards and what happened. So it's a continuous promotion. And I wonder, what was your general promotion plan behind this?
Yeah.
Behind this thing?
Yeah. So a lot of different things. One was obviously our own customer list and the brand presence we have. That's the obvious one, right? But also we had nominees, and then we had panelists. So we had 15 panelists, carefully selected from sales, pre-sales, with a big sort of social cloud, right? So if you're somebody who's a panelist, you're going to share, right? Again, this is more like you're paneling in this particular event. That was an expectation that we had, that if, we also want to distribute through you, right? So they shared the event. They found it cool. They shared the event, right? We had nominees share the event, right? We had people who were fans of The Office sort of see the event and sign up like, hey, these guys are doing something cool, right? We ran ads for it. We put the prize there. Like the prize was a big promotional tactic too, right? Like we put in a free trip. Now you have people saying that, oh my God, I've never seen this sort of a prize in SaaS, right? I think all of these different things sort of allowed that distribution. But I will also say, like, from our end, it was like constant. Like, I think we were, for 30 days, literally every day we were posting on LinkedIn. It was a lot of things, and we created like all sorts of different, visuals and assets which are around the Office theme. So all of those things ended up working pretty well for us.
When are you going to run it again?
So we're planning to do like our own conference next year. We might do it in person.
In person.
Yeah.
How do you know it was worth it? So much effort putting into all of this. You also have a landing page featuring everyone. You did live events. Like you said, you have to appoint panelists. There's a lot of kind of communication going on. You had the prize, yada, yada, yada. How do you know it was worth it?
A couple of things. One was, if you see the data in Google Search Console, in terms of your Storylane, like our own brand searches, in the time frame of that hype for the event till the actual event, and then maybe a couple of weeks there, right? I think we had like a 50-60% jump in brand searches, right? When you have an increase in brand searches, you obviously are educating people about the brand, you're seeing a sign-ups and all of that, right? That's number one. The other thing was, once the event was done, right, we used this event with our sales team to reactivate prospects that had gone cold. So for example, an enterprise deal that was currently sort of evaluating us versus a couple of competitors and had stopped replying for the last 2 weeks. We sent them this like, hey, just thought I'd let you know we did something cool, celebrated the Interact Demo Awards in the office style, if you want to check it out. And that is like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Hey, listen, about that call, let's do that on Thursday, right? And that reactivated a deal and eventually closed it. So there were a bunch of these things and we still use it as a sales enablement asset. It was a 28-minute event that lives in there, but like we constantly use it within our sales enablement, within our SDR outreach, within any sort of ads. We have ads running on that continuously, right? So it just ultimately, there's a hype during the event, and then there's a enablement piece after the event.
Nice. I like when a certain marketing asset is being reused in many different ways, in many different channels.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very cool. It's not just an awards show, but it actually drives value from multiple standpoints. And yeah, it would be very interesting to see how you would do this in real life at your own event. Let's talk a little bit about SEO, because you nearly 10x'd search traffic to Storylane in 6 months. I think I looked it up at Ahrefs, and we're definitely off in the exact numbers, but you went from like 7K to 70K visits per month in like half a year, which is quite impressive. So what's your typical SEO playbook?
Yeah, so the company's been around for about 2.5 years, or maybe 3 years now. And we started out with like the traditional blog SEO, right? Like focusing on bottom of the funnel, best apps, best software, focusing on top, middle, all of that, right? 3 years in, if you look at sort of our signups chart from it, it's sort of like, it's like steadily growing. Maybe it had like this initial surge in the first year, or sort of flattened going up and down, right? And in my opinion, it's a bloodbath out there in Google search right now, especially with like AI being overused with content and everything. Like the bar to content creation just keeps getting higher and higher. Everybody's creating great content, right? So, and we have our product is like, we've got 2 sales motions, right? We've got one is like a sales-led motion, the other is a product-led, a PLG motion, right? With the PLG motion, everything is sort of set right. From the email onboarding sequence to them sort of signing up, we've fine-tuned them like over months and years now. The only problem is traffic, right? You need enough traffic. Like there's a certain conversion percentage that works, and you need that traffic to be able to drive the number of signups, right? So that was a problem. Like my CEO actually raised it to me at the start of this year. I was like, listen, the PLG product needs to grow really fast, and I don't think traditional blog is it's gonna take. In the first 3 years we got here, like imagine how much time it's going to take, right? We need to think a little differently. And one of the things that we thought about trying was, so I don't know, Tim, like, are you aware about how interactive demos work? Like,
yeah. I think we actually used your product on some of our pages. I don't remember.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah, interesting.
I'm not sure if we kept those things, but I think we tried maybe in our help section, because we have help section with lots of explanations. Yeah. And one of our team members suggested, let's try putting those demos and see. But I don't remember how this thing ended.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, just maybe a quick introduction. It's basically like, it's a sort of interactive experience where you go from one beacon to the other, right? Like step by step, right? We had this idea that how about if we sort of, instead of creating like these many pages, we remove the text and just create an interactive demo on the page and see how it performs on Google. That was the experiment, right? There's different playbooks to it, but like for us, the traffic was important, right? So I actually took, like if you look at a bunch of the other PLG companies, you look at Zapier, you look at Scribe, you look at Canva, right? They have like these different sort of, like Zapier has a integration keywords playbook. Canva has a transactional keywords playbook, right? Like contract template, design template, and all of that, right? wanted to see that sort of a cluster. Like how could we find an opportunity where we could get to like 1 million in traffic a month by the end of this year? And one opportunity we found was that we sell to marketers, right? And all of these marketers are using different tools, right? Be it Mixpanel or they're using Ahrefs. We covered Ahrefs quite a lot, by the way. I'll get to that in a bit. Like, there are people who are looking for like, hey, how do I find a do follow backlink in Ahrefs? And there's like 350 people searching for it.
Oh.
Yeah. So there were like all of these, and there's like 100, 200 keywords you could sort of do
Which
that.
we're missing out on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for making me look bad with our SEO strategy.
And so for us, it was like, our goal was to just expose the people to interactive demo tech, and then they can take a call. And we had set up all of the conversion elements in there, And so what we did was we took, for example, how to find a do follow backlink in Ahrefs, and we created, instead of like a step-by-step playbook where it was like step 1, this text, a screenshot, step 2, we created an interactive demo out of it. And basically, put like, hey, you can create this demo in 8 minutes, right? And we tried it out with 100 pages with different sort of tools. And what we saw was that we outranked all of the major domains. You think of Salesforce, Canva, Notion, HubSpot, Slack, Ahrefs, all of those. We outranked your support articles.
Nice.
So, and that was an assumption like, does Google really need text, right? We had some text, maybe like 30, 40 words. That's about it. But do you need text, right? What if you could just live on page experience as a bit, right? And that hypothesis actually worked. So we're like, okay, we have this thing, we have an opportunity. How do we scale this, right? So I said, let's get a bunch of contractors. Let's grow this to like 400 pages, 500 pages a month. And so at this time, I think we're about to hit about maybe 2,500 pages or something, right? And it just kept growing, and it just sort of worked. And like just some data, and this is from the Ahrefs rank tracker only. That so by the way, we're big Ahrefs customers. In our rank tracking, if you look at all of these 2,500 pages, 1 out of the 5 page ranks in position number 1, and about 57% of these pages rank in the top 10 on the first page, right? So it just shows how well this sort of works. And we called this initiative Demo-led SEO, and just sort of blew up. Again, like channel market fit.
This is such a good pitch for Storylane for anyone doing SEO. Because first of all, I agree with you that text is not necessarily critical for your page to rank, because we have this very famous case where we had a landing page for the keyword backlink checker, and we just explained we have a backlink checker in Ahrefs, we're the best backlink database, blah, blah, blah. But it was just a landing page, and there was a button, sign up for Ahrefs. It ranked number 8, and no matter what we did, it didn't rank higher. And we realized that everyone who was ranking above us were free tools. So we didn't change anything about the page. We just added the input field, like put your website URL, hit go, and we created a free tool that would show you your top 100 backlinks. It immediately shot off to number 1, which you're saying people need experience, and Google is tracking that, how people interact with your page. Do they stay? Do they come back to it? Yeah. So this is what happened to you. And it's very cool. I know, call it SEO hack, SEO trick, or maybe SEO tactic. I don't like the words hack and trick. That whatever kind of how-to searches you have, whether around your brand or related to the industry, where instead of just writing it out, you can just have an interactive demo and show it off. And you have a proof that putting this interactive demo without too much words and screenshots and all of that can actually help those pages rank.
Yeah.
So I wonder if after seeing this podcast, more people will start using Storylane on their pages and ranking higher. You should probably cut this thing and reshare it. This is a hint for your employee advocacy team. This is something to share in terms of use cases of Storylane. Yeah, that's very cool. But I also want to quickly talk with you about backlinks.
Yeah.
What did you do in terms of backlinks to kind of boost your website authority, or it was all natural?
So, our website, obviously, over the last 3 years, we've sort of grown with whatever organic backlinks came, right? And then for about 6 months this year, we tried to build backlinks to our blog pages, right? Hot take coming.
Okay.
All right. Gonna get a lot of hate. Your comment section's gonna be fire. It didn't move the needle at all. We built a lot of backlinks. We worked with agencies as well. I mean, actually, you know what? We tried with the agency. We hated that experience. And then we did that in-house for a while. It didn't move the rankings. It didn't really have any sort of impact, right? And we pulled out the backlink program. We're just like, we're not going to care about it, right? This entire demo-led initiative that took us from 7 to 70,000, no external backlinks.
Wow.
Nothing, right? Maybe some internal backlinking, which is through like a sort of, we don't have breadcrumbs, but like through the footer links and all of that. But that was about it, right? And I generally feel, at least from what I'm seeing right now, backlinks are definitely not as important as they used to be. That's the hot take.
Backlinks are dead, ladies and gentlemen. No, I don't actually think they're not dead because, like you said, the comment section might be fired up with where were you getting these backlinks from, where they were pointing, what kind of anchor tags you were using. And again, I don't want to get too deep into SEO because this is not what our podcast is focusing on. But from the recent Google leak, what we realized is actually what a lot of people in the SEO space were talking about for a long time is that actual experience on the page matters a lot.
Yeah.
And this is what proved for you. Yeah, you can have a lot of backlinks, but if people come to your page and they bounce, you're not going to rank. And brand matters a lot. And this is a nice segue into what I want to talk about with you next, the conversation about branding, because you also had a post on LinkedIn. You were talking about events marketing actually, but what you pointed out is how much your brand is helping you out with events marketing, because when no one knows you, no one is visiting your booth really. Well, some people might come up and what do you guys do? Who are you? But it is much easier when people come up and they've heard about you before and they already have some more specific questions about you and all that. But back to branding, and especially branding through the lens of early stage marketing.
Yeah.
So I wonder which initiatives you typically implement, and you can talk about Storylane. Is branding a deliberate effort where you thought, okay, we need to do X, Y, Z because this is directly related to our brand in any way? Or was it just natural because you were working on other initiatives and your brand was lifted up?
No, it was a very deliberate effort.
Tell me about your deliberate branding effort.
Yeah. And to be clear, right, like this is probably the first time where branding is probably the biggest chunk of my portfolio. Like that's the bit where I focus the most amount of time, I get the most amount of results, I have the most resources allocated towards it. It wasn't the case 10 years back. Like I was more of the lead gen guy. Today it's so funny that, 7-8 years back, social media marketing was an afterthought. Hey, we need to have a Twitter account. Hey, we need to have a LinkedIn account. Just post your shit there. Hey, we did our product update, this and that, right? Today, you've got social media marketers that are actually becoming CMOs, which is such a huge transition. Like social media marketers right now are probably, in my opinion, I think they're the highest in demand right now. Like everybody wants to be big on LinkedIn. Everybody wants to sort of be big on YouTube. Like everybody knows that a lot of people, especially Gen Z, is now taking decisions based on through their peer groups, through what they see on social, and less on like articles sometimes because they tend to be a little biased sometimes. So yeah, for us, it was like 100% that, okay, we knew word of mouth was great for us. We needed to invest in brand. So what do we do with it? And really, it starts off with like just about being different, finding your own voice and finding your own tribe. That's sort of where it starts, doing these one-of-a-kind initiatives. Because I think when you start with brand, you sort of get this thinking in your head that, listen, we're not going to go after competitors or anything, right? Like, we're just going to go after that. This is the market size and we're not doing enough to reach there. That's sort of the premise of it, right? Like we have this huge market, we need to reach that. We don't care what our competitors are doing and everything. We need to do what we're doing and build our own tribe. And so that's what we started with. We're like, how do we find some of these one-of-a-kind initiatives to just grow our brand, right? LinkedIn was a big lever out of it, right? LinkedIn is a great promotional medium, but what do you promote there? Is it a new visual identity, or is it a brand new initiative nobody's ever done, or a brand new prize nobody's ever done, or some sort of thought leadership, deep thought leadership you continue sharing, right? There's multiple, levers to it. Or do you sort of get some sort of natural virality kicked in by just sort of, maybe sponsoring a couple of creators, getting them to create demos about you, running ads. There's multiple pieces to it. So it really, for us, it started out like, let me just maybe call out, right? Around January, we basically sort of, I had that conversation with my CEO and we were like, hey, what's the first thing we could do to sort of like really grow our brand? And I think we started with like sponsoring a bunch of podcasts and newsletters. I know you guys also do that a lot, right? Found a couple, started doing that, seeing how it works, right? The attribution data says we didn't get any signups. Like, let me put it that way. And that's why I tell you that why attribution models are broken, right? First touch, last touch, nothing. You talk to sales, they'd be like, oh yeah, this guy said, yeah, he saw you there and he was there. And they said those leads are the sort of most ready leads to buy, right? Like, that's so funny, right? So we're like, okay, this is working. This is great. Like, okay, newsletters and podcasts are working. What else could we do? How about we sort of start doing some one-of-a-kind initiatives ourselves? So it started out with like, let's do maybe long podcasts people don't want to listen to these days. I'm on a long podcast and I know the value out of it. I'm going to champion for it. But I think we also live in an age where people want snack content quite a lot. You go open Instagram, you have like these 1-minute interview snippets that people love, right? So we're like, could we create a series around it? So we created the series called GTM on the Go, which was 5 minutes, 5 questions with leaders. And we did that, and we basically promoted that 1-minute clip. And what's funny was that the amount of views we get on a 1-hour episode compared to the amount of views we get on a 1-minute episode is like 10x. It's insane, like the reach you get, right? So that was a distribution sort of play. We were like, could we do more of these? Could we create more of these 1-minute clips? So we did that very aggressively. I think if you look at our YouTube channel, if you look at our LinkedIn, we have like over 120 of these snack clips, right? That allowed us a lot of reach. That was where it started. And then I can go from there. Like, we did the demo Dundies, the demo day, we did the demo hub launch. There's a bunch of these, yeah.
First of all, I definitely disagree with you that long form podcasts are a bad format. I didn't say everyone will see that Ahrefs podcast is going to be the best podcast in the marketing space in about a year from now. And I have a lot of interesting things that I've realized while doing this podcast, how this whole thing works. One day I will write, I don't know, maybe a LinkedIn post or maybe an article about it. And I'm sure people would have a lot of revelations, because I had a lot of revelations while doing this. But
I do want to sort of say, I don't like, I'm not saying that long form is bad. What I'm basically trying to say is that what is happening with long form, and I can tell you this, is that when we invest an hour in a podcast episode, right, a lot of times the podcast episode is not good. Do we agree on that? Right?
We'll trim all your bad parts. It won't be 2 hours, don't worry.
But like, I mean, and then after an hour, you're like, oh, did I just waste a lot of my time, right? So it obviously depends. Sometimes the podcasts build reputations, right? Yours have built a reputation. I mean, there's a bunch of these, that have sort of worked, right? The reason why the snack episodes work is that the time investment drastically reduces. So that's why. I'm not saying it's bad. Like, for sure, a lot of the podcast episodes I listen to is at the gym, which is like 45 minutes.
And
right?
you don't have an opportunity to switch from a clip to clip. You just want to turn something on, whether you like going shopping, whether you're jogging, whether you're in the gym, or whether you're driving. You want something that would keep you occupied for 30, 40 minutes. 100%. And if it's interesting after 30, 40 minutes, you'll just keep listening however long it is.
Yeah, and usually at that time, my notes app is open the most, when I'm just like, oh man, this idea. Oh, I got this brilliant new idea. So 100% that works. I'm just saying that, it was just a different take to it, like from a distribution standpoint, that's all.
Let's go back to branding, because podcast is a completely different conversation. What is a Storylane brand? So you said you had a lot of deliberate efforts into building Storylane brand, and you did a good job, because I see at Ahrefs the search volume went from 100 searches per month to 2,000 searches per month in the US only. So globally it's even more. So yeah, you definitely raised awareness with all your activities. People started searching for Storylane, which is reflected in your search volume in Ahrefs. I have to say Ahrefs a lot of times. But what is Storylane brand? How do you define it? How do you codify it? How do you put meaning into it?
That's a deep question.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I have the actual answer for it because it's still something I still think about a little bit. But I think for us, it was more like we're one of our positioning standpoints. Like, we've thought a lot about our product's positioning, and one of it is about first of kind in the category on many features. That's something that we know works for us when we win deals and all of that, right? Could we bring that positioning into our brand, right? And basically innovate in marketing, basically do things that people have not done before, go against what the regular boring B2B playbook often is, right? And that's what we've sort of gone with, whether you sort of look at our website right now, right? It's very different from a month ago where it sort of looked like a traditional B2B SaaS website, right? We're trying bold colors. We're sort of trying things that you don't see on a SaaS website. That's more on the visual identity. But even on the brand initiatives, it's about like, we're not going to do the standard webinar. Like, no chance we're going to do that. We're going to put a different spin to it and do a demo Dundies, right? We're not going to launch a product on Product Hunt to get upwards and do like a PR launch on PR Web or something, right? Like, that just doesn't work. We're gonna send swag boxes to influencers. We're gonna partner up with creators and create these humorous videos. We're gonna do things differently, right? And that's sort of the identity around the Storylane brand. That's what people know us about. Like, anybody who knows about Storylane, they're never gonna get bored sort of following us. There's always going to be this positive entertainment that's gonna come in, always. So yeah.
So I did an interview with CMO of Crypto.com, Steven Kalifowitz, and because they have such a huge brand, branding was most of our discussion. And I printed out, I saw on LinkedIn, people share lots of infographics that go kind of viral on LinkedIn. And there was like something brand positioning cheat sheet or something. And there were 6 or 7 questions that you have to answer about your brand to codify it. Did you do anything like that?
Nope.
No.
It was never. I mean, it was more like, I'll tell you what was there. It was more like some of us in a conference room for 3 hours, sort of understanding what are we. Like, it wasn't a specific set of questions. It was just asking.
What are you?
It's not. It's more like I said, it's like we are sort of bringing in sort of like this innovation in the category. That's what we're sort of going for, right? And there's multiple meanings to it that flow across departments, across initiatives and all of that. But that's sort of what and I think one is like, and I'll tell you like maybe a larger narrative that we're going for is that we're building the buying practices that will look like in 2030 today. The buying in SaaS is evolving very fast. Like, if you look at 10 years ago to today, it's drastically different, right? And you want to be prepared for 2030. And so we are sort of preparing for that year today.
So speaking from my experience, a lot of people, a lot of our customers, a lot of people in our audience usually tell me that Ahrefs has an awesome brand, that we've built a great brand over the years, and people compliment me on that. But what's interesting that I have no idea what we did there, because it was never a deliberate effort that we need to build our brand like this and our brand is that. But I do think that we had some messages, because we talked with another one of my guests, I think it was John Stoner from Airwallex, that you cannot just promote a brand by itself, like Ahrefs or Storylane, or his brand is Airwallex. Yeah, Ahrefs, Storylane, Airwallex. You need to connect it with something. So when people hear your brand, they have some associations. And I think one of the big associations that I was creating with Ahrefs brand, while not kind of being deliberate that I want Ahrefs brand to be this, is our data focus. Because we were spreading a lot of messages about the fact that our crawler is the second best after Google, and I actually saw people using this phrase verbatim on Reddit and such. I was kind of bragging about the data centers that we have, shooting videos about that. And we're also, another message we were sending is that we are all about quality.
Yeah.
Even with the SEO book that we created, we splurge on it big time, because even to print it, it's like 22 USD. So $22 just to print a book, that is a very expensive book, because it's like full color, hardcover, embossing, all those kinds of things. It's just beautiful. And when I go to conferences and I see the kinds of books that other companies are giving out on their stands, they're just low quality, I don't know, $3 to print books. And this again speaks about our quality, and this is what we were kind of pursuing. We were spreading the message that we are very big on data. We're very big on technology. We're investing in our data centers. We're investing in our data warehouses and those kinds of things. And we like to do things in the highest quality way possible, which transitions into those kinds of things, the kind of swag we do. And now hopefully our conference would also live up to the expectation.
Yeah.
So I wonder how you see your brand in this regard. What kind of things, what kind of messages you were pushing, and what kind of other mediums you used to connect your brand to something.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's like, what you just said with the Ahrefs, right? Like from what I've been an Ahrefs customer for a very, very long time. I think since 2017 or something. And for me, the Ahrefs brand is quality. Right? Like that's what, whether that's data quality or in the assets quality, like the blogs, the course, the visuals that you have. Oh my God, I just love, just look at this. This is so nice.
Yeah, we have our own custom font. This is again on brand, because we want to go as deep as designing our own font, not just buying some font, designing our own. That is us.
And this is, the previous font was not bad too. Just FYI, I like that too. The previous font that you
that's
had.
Still kind of, we have a lady who's a font designer. Okay. She's a professional font designer, and almost any font you see from us is custom made for us for different purposes. You had an interesting experience at Close. Again, I think that's from your LinkedIn. Another big project was leading the company's rebrand from close.io to close.com.
Yeah.
This involved restructuring our pricing, rolling out new product features. First of all, a rebranding from .io to .com. Is it much of a rebrand?
It definitely is, because you're is less about the logo change and everything, more about the admin work that goes behind it. Right, the .io to .com, it's a whole SEO project altogether. Of course, moving to another domain itself is a different thing altogether. But also, it's a big statement. It's listen, we're not a .io brand, we're a .com brand. We paid 6 figures for it to get the .com, right? .coms were, no matter what you said, the .com is the most popular sort of extension. So that was our thing. If you're going to go a little bit upmarket, go to more enterprises, they don't want to work with a brand that's on .io. They want to work with a .com. So that was sort of the narrative. We're we have matured, we're going from .io to .com.
What else did you change except for, I can see how .com makes sense.
Yeah.
But what else did you change at this time? I know the messaging on your homepage. Did you redesign your logo? What else changed about your brand?
So a lot of things happened after that, right? After it started with the .io to .com. With that, we had a change in pricing, because there was going to be a significant change. So the price, for example, we introduced a lower tier pricing to be able to reach a wider audience, right? We restructured the existing pricing, so we had to have conversations to figure out that the existing customers don't lose and we don't leave, right? And then after all of these things happened, there had to be a full update about the website and everything. So we had started working on it, but I wasn't there till the point where the actual website went live. But all of these things happened, in the .io to .com sort of transition. I think it went on for about 2 to 3 years, and it actually came, the reason why this also came was because so Close's CEO, Stelly FT, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, he's pretty popular in sales, right? His brand is so big, we actually struggled in the company where it was Close was smaller than his brand, right? which is not a great place to be. Like, oh, this is Stelli's company. That's not who you want to be associated as, right? So we wanted to figure out a way, how do we go above Stelli as a brand, right? That was the conversation that happened. And .com was one big part of it, right? Us becoming a bigger company. And then there were a lot of other initiatives that sort of happened after that. But yeah.
It's great that you've brought it up, because this was my next question that I had to segue somehow into. Founder brand versus company brand.
Yeah.
And actually, to our earlier conversation about connecting your brand to something,
yeah.
When brand is connected to a person, whether it's a founder or in my case, it's a CMO, because a lot of people associate Ahrefs with myself, it's very easy to infuse your brand with whatever qualities the person is displaying. And probably the best today's example of that is Elon Musk and his companies. It also works the other way around. So there's company brand that says something about the person running it, and there's person running the brand that says something about the brand. And these two are so connected that whenever Elon says something that a lot of people disagree with, they start, canceling their pre-orders of Teslas or something like that. But I wonder how you went about solving this, and why do you even need to solve it? I guess one reason why the founder doesn't want to be that closely associated with their company is if they want to sell. Because then you break this link, you disassociate the company and the founder. And I feel the founder brand is helping the company a lot, obviously. And to the point when the founder brand is bigger than the company brand, then the company is not worth that much without a founder. So how did you go about growing Close brand separately from the founder? What was needed to be done?
So one thing I would definitely say is that that's my opinion, but I think person-led brands, like if you, like for example, founder-led brands, what you're saying, right? I think it's very rare that a company goes super big with a founder-led brand. Because especially if you're selling to enterprises, they tend to buy from like actual companies, lesser the individual sort of thing, right? Like another example, for example, the one that is happening right now is, I don't know if you've heard of Adam Robinson from retention.com.
Yeah. He's pretty big on LinkedIn.
Yeah, he's just sort of blown up this year, right? And his brand is bigger than his company. That's for sure. Like that's what we see it. Like we see it, right? That's not a good thing in my opinion, because I feel that, okay, your brand is growing, but like everybody starts associating like, oh, this is Adam's company. How is Adam different? How is that, right? Retention.com or like whatever his other companies are, that, there it sort of loses its edge, right? Now you have more search volume for your own brand versus your competitors, like your own founder brand, right? So I've never been a big fan. Like that's also one of the reasons anytime I've started a blog, I don't do like, I used to have a blog called madhavb.com, but like I moved to early stage marketing because that's a lot easier for people to remember. So anyway, that's there, right? So I think here it works for very early stage if you're trying to grow. If the founder is active, right, it's a great way to sort of grow. But you ultimately need to get into a company brand mode. I think with Stelli's thing, right, with Stelli and Close, the way it was happening was that with all of Stelli's content, we started putting in Close in that. You'd be surprised, for like 10 years, he had created many ebooks, many courses and all of that, but there's no mention about Close, right? And we made Close front and center into his existing assets, right? That was one way sort of infusing that, right? The other thing was that when we started, initially it was like any communication that used to happen from Close used to come from Stelli. Like there would be a video, his face around it, right? If you see the last couple of years, right, you'd notice that Stelli's face was hardly there, right? It's more the company sort of creating its own sort of visual identity, communicating through its own, right? The Stelli brand sort of reduced a little bit. So it was just around that, right? Like it was initiatives where you, instead of the founder sort of communicating, the founder's face being all sort of wrapped up there, right? You just associate that. Initially, the Stelli brand worked to sort of grow the business to where it was. But then, Close had to take charge on its own and sort of grow from there and build its own sort of reputation.
So yeah, I think I would agree with you that founder brand is very useful to grow the company in the early stages, because we're talking about early stage marketing, by the way. But not so much if you want to get really big.
Yeah.
Because there's only so far you can promote a company through someone's personal brand.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, is founder brand part of your early stage marketing playbook? How often would you come in and persuade the CEO to work on their personal brand, because this is a good way to promote the company, to get customers, to get visibility, and to even propel the brand forward? And like I said, start connecting the brand to something so that people would know what to associate it with, like in the early days, while you're not big enough to be able to stand for something that's bigger than a person.
Every single time.
Every single time.
Like even at Hubstaff, right? Like LinkedIn was there, but it wasn't like this content medium, right? But we focused on the transparency from founders, right? Like why they decided to go bootstrap, why did they sort of go with the freemium version, every decision behind their sort of thing. It was like initially that sort of helped us get there, right? Even here at Storylane, like I'm always pushing my SEO. I'm not always successful because, it's one of the things where it's like, it's going to take 3-4 hours of his time in the entire week, right? And no matter any other ghostwriter or anybody who can write it, there is a certain voice you need in your content. Like the other person can't write it. Yes, your thoughts can come in, but I think you need to write it. So I'm always pushing him, and gladly here, like I have a CEO sort of slowly sort of adopting it, but 100% every single time. Because I feel that in today's world, if you have executive presence on LinkedIn, you definitely have a big advantage over your competitors. Because a lot of people have seen your brand, have seen you on LinkedIn, have seen the founder, have seen the functional heads there, and that definitely dictates the buying cycle for sure.
As we're nearing the end of our episode, I have a few challenging questions for you. So you mentioned it a few times on LinkedIn, and you also mentioned this on the interview. This is from your time at Hubstaff. For the first 6 months, I tested around 80 to 90 different tactics.
Yeah.
This included SEO experiments, newsletters, blah, blah, blah. Tested around 80 to 90 different tactics. First of all, that's a lot, especially for the first 6 months. Secondly, the word tested doesn't sit well with me, and I will explain why with the example of this podcast. We've been doing this podcast, we've been testing this podcast for the past, I think it's 9 months. We started recording our first episodes 9 months ago, maybe even a year ago.
Yeah.
And the state of this podcast right now is still not where I want it to be. So I cannot, in my head, tested, especially testing 80 things in the first 6 months, it means I would release one episode, it wouldn't fly, obviously, because this is my first episode, and I would give it up. But channels like this take a very long time to build, to figure out, to build all the processes around it. And like I said, I had a lot of revelations about how this thing actually works, which I didn't understand when I was going into it. So I learned along the way. So help me solve this conundrum. How 100%. Are you testing things when to get things right, it requires a long investment over time and figuring things out and fine-tuning things until they start working?
Yeah. So one difference is that at that time it was 2 years experience. Now I'm 12 years. So I agree with what you're saying, right? Like 100%, right? It's very different. At that time it was like, test, let's try it. But I will say that when I joined Hubstaff, we were at 180K in ARR. That's peanuts, like what, 15K or something, right? MRR. And at that time, you don't have the luxury to test out a podcast for a year. You don't have the budget to test out things, right? It's all about quick iterations, being imperfect, trying to just find whatever's the thing that can sort of write that, right? So yes, there are, like, for example, SEO, right? Like it's not something you can test in a week, right? But when I talk about these things, it was small things like, okay, in a week, we're going to try to get listed on one integration marketplace. In a week, we're going to run this giveaway on our social media, right? In 1 week, we're going to, post a controversial take as a blog post and promote it at different places, right? And by the end of it, you'll have some results. It's not going to be conclusive. It's going to be some things, right? And what you would notice is that, like, I think we did these weekly sprints for like 6 months, right? And that sort of started dictating a certain portfolio, that every time we did this thing, right, there was some predictability that happened. For example, we put out a post about how we remained bootstrapped, and then 3 months later we tried another blog post about how we again a transparency one, where we sort of made our revenue data completely transparent. Everybody could see it, right? Both times it got a lot of like traction. It was easier to promote, right? So maybe that became one of the potential things in the portfolio, transparency. Could we use transparent content to sort of piggyback our growth, right? Similarly, for example, newsletter. It was just like these small things, and us looking for predictability in the most shortest time frame way. I'm not saying, at that time it wasn't about like saying that these channels will never work. It's more about, will these channels continue working over the next 3 months if we, let's say, double or triple or 10x the investment. It was a very short time frame because it was very, very early stage. Today, obviously, things I'll look at differently. I don't discount channels immediately, right? And I think one thing for sure now I know is that content creation, no matter what medium, like it is marketing in today's world. And if you sort of are smart about it, you can sort of succeed, right? But that was the initial reason why the 80-90 marketing tests happened.
I wonder if you have the answer to this question, because it seems every channel takes quite a bit of time to get it right. What are the channels that you suggest early stage founders to start building out and investing in as early as possible, even when you know that they won't really see any returns in the first 2-3 months?
First is, if you're pre-revenue, make the best assumption on like who is that role that you're targeting at, right? If you're post-revenue and if you've got like predictability in your leads and revenue, and if you're at 1, 2, 3 million, whatever, right? You have a certain idea of who you sell to. And so you also can think about where they sort of hang out. You know, you can also ask your customers. One of the best things is like get on 10 calls, ask them, hey, where do you hang out? And you'll find a couple of newsletters, a couple of communities, you'll find LinkedIn, you'll find all these different channels, right? And that becomes your portfolio, right? And then it's really just about how do you sort of grow in those particular channels, right? I think easily, like I'm very opinionated about it, like content is marketing in today's world. That is 100% what it is. And so you need to very heavily invest in content creation, right? Whether that's short form content, multimodal sort of a content, or, you know, like any, like, but you need to invest into that, whether that's sharing your own story, whether it's sharing your insights, whether it's your behind the scenes for the customer, whatever that is, right? And that is the first thing I would do that. And I would sort of look at the distribution side of things from where these people hang out, right? And I think you should be able to find it there. And I'll also say this, like, this is what, like, for example, at Storylane, before I came in, my CEO used to sort of handle marketing. He wasn't doing it perfectly, right? But the goal wasn't to do it at perfection. It was more about, is this something where we can drive predictability? If it does, I'm going to hire a head of marketing. That's what he did. So 1 year, like after I came in, like I saw a bunch of things. I'm like, oh my God, like I need to change these things, like, you know, my thing. But it allowed him to move fast. It allowed him in a year to test out, okay, marketing is worth sort of investing in right now. So yeah, that's what I would sort of also advise these founders, right? Like, don't go for perfection. Focus on content. Find the places where customers sort of hang out, and then just figure out a distribution strategy to promote your content there.
Final question. It's somewhat personal, because you have a post on your LinkedIn where you essentially lost your passion to marketing.
Yeah.
And you took a break from working at companies, and you took time to figure out what you want to do. And you were open about talking to a therapist about it and getting the valuable advice on focus on the parts of your job you love and remove the parts you don't. Is this burnout? Can I call it burnout?
I don't know. I don't know if... I actually don't know. I can't define what this is. It may be a mix of burnout or a bunch of other things. It's more like it's many mixed feelings. I don't know if you've if you can relate to this or anybody else, right? But it's more like when you've sort of spent like this happened to me when I think I'd spent almost 10 years in marketing, and I sort of had like these couple of recurring things that were just not going away out of my head. One was around I was tackling the same marketing challenges again and again and again at different companies, right? Conversion rate optimization, SEO, email marketing, affiliates. And I was just like, is that the end of it, right? Like, it's just like the same thing again and again. You just lose that excitement because, if like the initial first 2-3 years in your marketing or whatever, like maybe even for you right now, right? You're just snacking on podcasts, you're learning, you're reading books. There's like this general thirst. And when that goes away, you're sort of like, what am I doing, right? Like, and I sort of came to a point where I was just like, I'm not excited in what I'm doing. I'm just tackling on the same thing. So I really wanted to sort of think about like, what is the next step in my career? And then the other thing was also that I think this, like a lot of people might not agree with this, but marketing is also a very high stakes role where it's like, especially if you're a marketing leader and you're reporting to the CEO, CEOs are not managers. They're not people who will sort like, they're very direct in what they want and what they need, right? And when you work with a bunch of CEOs and you're constantly under pressure all the time, right? It's like you're always on for years and years and years. That's I think where the burnout comes in. And when I say always on, it's also things like, when you hear like, so I've also been like let go once, right? And I've also sort of heard a lot of stories of other people letting go. And one of the most scariest messages you can get from your CEO is somebody, your CEO messaging on Slack, hey, you got 5 minutes, right? And you know that's going to sort of lead to something really bad, right? And anytime you're having a bad phase in your work, you would go into that spiral, and then it just sort of makes you stop enjoying it, right? And so I think I reached a point where I was just like, I need to figure this out. So I took a step back, and I was constantly talking to like a coach, again, found through multiple sessions and everything. And one thing really resonated with me, which is probably a good advice to every marketing leader, right? Like, first just ask yourself this question, that do you hate everything you do in your job, or there's some parts of it you hate or some parts you love, right? In my case, it wasn't everything. It was more like there were certain bits I didn't like and some bits I liked. So next bit is, what if you removed all the bad bits for a little bit? And that's why I decided to go fractional, where I thought that, hey, I'm going to get rid of all the bad bits for a year, just going to focus on the kind of clients I want to work with, kind of work I want to take up, and not worry too much about, hey, salary or whatever. Like, I'm just going to focus on that, right? That's what I did. 1 year, I was just focusing on the good parts of it. And you have no idea, Tim, like it was so transformational, because for me, it was just like, it was rediscovering my love for marketing again. Like, I think right now I'm at a very, very good place where I'm just like, I'm the person now who's at the gym listening to podcasts all the time. I'm the person who's sort of reading blogs. I'm the one who's talking to people. And there's like this energy that's back, right? And there's a different playbook and different goals in my life. And I'd say maybe like a marketer 2.0 after I've gone fractional and gone back into full time, right? And it's so refreshing right now, because I think now I look at my role very differently from before fractionally. And I think that is needed. So if anybody is sort of in that spiral, I think it's always good to take that break and ask these questions to be able to figure out why that's happening. Because like, I almost guarantee it, you will face this at some point in your career, whether that's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whenever. Yeah.
Madhav, thanks a lot for the conversation. I enjoyed it a lot.
I really enjoyed it, and thank you for inviting me.
Thanks a lot for sticking till the very end of this episode. I guess that means you enjoyed it, right? Because if you did, I have to ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, or maybe click the follow button if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify. Not sure if you know this, but subscriptions and follows are the strongest signal for these platforms to show this piece of content to more people. So I would really, really appreciate it if you would follow and subscribe. Thanks in advance, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.